Hey, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. You coming on and talking about the Federal Advocacy Forum. So welcome.
Thanks for having me, Karen. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so the Federal Advocacy Forum was just earlier this week, right?
Yeah, it was Sunday through Tuesday of this week.
Okay, so before we go any further, can you just tell everyone what the Federal Advocacy Forum is?
So the Federal Advocacy Forum is a conference where physical therapists and physical therapist assistants and students come together from across the country and talk to their legislators about issues that are important for physical therapists and most importantly, our patients. And during this conference, not only are we going to the Capitol, lobbying for some issues that we would like to see improve access to care and cost of care for physical therapy, but we're also getting training on ways to talk to our federal congressmen and senators. And so throughout the entire time, you're getting training, learning about the issues, and also talking to different colleagues about kind of what they're going to be doing as far as talking to their legislators as well.
And what was on the docket this year? What were the big issues that the physical therapy community wanted to talk to their legislators about?
So there were three different issues that we focused on this year. The first one was repeal the therapy cap. So as many of you know, 2 years ago, the therapy cap was almost repealed. We missed it by 2 votes when SGR was repealed. And so we're trying to lobby for that again. And so the focus of this time advocating for the repeal of the therapy cap was ensuring that we don't have a hard cap that gets kicked in at the end of the year. So if it's not either repealed by the end of the year or an exceptions process isn't extended, then the hard cap will go into place. And so patients will only be able to receive at most of physical and speech therapy combined. And we know that that can decrease access and be very problematic for people that have chronic conditions. So that was the first bill that we advocated for. The second bill that we advocated for was the student workforce bill. And so what this one would do is incorporate physical therapists as providers in rural areas. And if you work in a rural area or underserved, doesn't have to be rural, so it could be urban too. In an underserved area, you would get $50,000 of your loans paid off after 2 years of working in that area. And one of the interesting things about this, and I think that a lot of people have thought about as far as legislators have, is that the statistics show that if a healthcare provider, so currently physical therapists aren't in this, but if a healthcare provider is sent to an underserved area and is a part of this program, they have a 75% chance of staying in that area, which is something that I learned this weekend that I never knew. So no rehabilitation professionals is on that. And so we advocated for physical therapists as well as other rehabilitation professionals. And then the final law that we lobbied for was the Safe Play Act, so standardizing concussion management throughout the United States. And we actually talked to mostly Democrats about this issue because we haven't really come forth with a bill yet. We're looking for a champion to champion this bill to help standardize it throughout the U.S. So those were the three focuses of the bills that we were advocating for on Capitol Hill.
And can we go back to the Medicare cap? The broadcast got a little fuzzy. So if a hard cap is put in place by the end of this year, how many visits would that limit older adults to?
Usually it's about 20 visits. I mean, 20. It depends. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're charging, what you're billing for, because, you know, each code is a different value. So it depends on how long you see them. So at my clinic, we see patients usually for an hour, depending on their condition, but we average about 4 units. And so, you know, I'll be able to see somebody less than, say, a hospital that maybe sees people for 2 units. But the average is about 20 visits or $3,700 for a hard cap. And then the soft cap is at about $1,960 is where the soft cap is. You can go over the soft cap if you put the exemption modifier on there and go to the hard cap. And sometimes you can even get a little bit more depending on if it's medically justified due to what's in place now. But if this bill doesn't get passed or the exception process doesn't get passed, then we would stop at $3,700.
And how does that affect our patients? I mean,
That's a really great question, Karen. And this was one of the things that they teach you at Federal Advocacy Forum is the most important part about advocating to a legislator is not necessarily telling them about the bill, giving them the statistics. It's telling them the stories of their constituents. And as physical therapists, we're in a very unique role where we get to see patients quite a bit. We get to understand what they're going through, and we get to know their families. And so we can relate a lot more stories than I think a lot of other healthcare professionals can. One of the examples that I shared with my congressman this weekend was one of his constituents is a 52-year-old man with cerebral palsy. And we've been seeing him off and on for the last 10 years at my clinic. And when he came in 2 years ago, he was walking with a walking stick. He ended up undergoing a spinal fusion from C2 to T3 and was hospitalized for a very long time, had some infections, so it was further complicated by that. And by the time he got out of the hospital, he was wheelchair bound. And so he came to me and I treated him for, a lot of different things, mostly for his surgery that he had. But he started coming in February, and by the time July came, we had run out of visits. And he is such a complicated patient that, no matter how much I would have spaced his visits out, it still would have been really difficult to give him the total care that he needs because he had his ups and downs. He was still having problems with some of his infections. And so I told that story to our legislator, and it was very moving for him. And those have a lot of impact. Eva Norman, who's a physical therapist out of Minnesota and was part of my group, always shares videos when she goes and advocates with advocates. And her videos are always so great. It seems like she always picks the sweetest old ladies and old men that just really make you just chuckle as you're watching them on the screen. But videos I have found are even more powerful than just sharing personal stories or even personal letters, because the congressman gets to actually see the person, hear their emotions. And so it's your way of kind of helping that patient reach out to their senator or to their congressional delegation.
That's a great idea. I never thought to use a video of course, Ava Norman thinks of these things because she's fabulous.
She's the expert.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it really does. It puts a face and a voice to the name, much more than a letter or, like you said, you're relaying a story. This is someone who's going through a lot of hardships. Like the patient you just described, that's a lifelong physical therapy patient.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I think that a lot of times people think of physical therapy as something where you go get injured, you go for a couple weeks and then you're better. And, what we're finding now, especially with this chronic pain stuff that's going on in the opioid epidemic, is that sometimes physical therapy can be potentially a year-round thing. It can be something where you go see your PT once a month just to get an update on how you're doing, weaning you off. I like how Sandy Hilton, who's a physical therapist out of Chicago, always says that we should never be discharging patients. I truly do believe in that. And I think that that's something that we as physical therapists and larger physical therapy companies should consider when they do some of their billing, because a lot of times when we write notes, we're required to write discharge notes. So even though technically we don't want to discharge that patient, it's something that's required in order to get paid.
Right. And that's a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so you talked about repealing the Medicare cap. What kind of feedback did you get from, maybe not from yours, but what was the vibe from Federal Advocacy Forum on that topic?
Well, I think it kind of depends on who you ask. I think that it's a lot more hopeful than it has been in the past. The fact that we came so close earlier on a couple of years ago really gives us hope about it. But the with the things going on in Washington, I'm not sure how much of a priority that's going to be. I think we have a lot of legislators that co-sponsor the legislation and are in support of it. But as many of you may know, there were some people that said that they would support the Medicare therapy cap 2 years ago and then voted against it. And then there were some legislators who said that they weren't going to support it and then voted for it. So overall, I think that there's still hope that it can happen. And that's why, APTA is working so hard every single day to try to APTA has their own lobbyists, and so they go to the Hill every day. They talk to all of the congressional delegates to try to, get our point across. So I think it depends on the position that your legislator has, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and I think it also depends on what their constituents say. If they get a lot of it seems like based on the current climate of Washington, if they get a lot of phone calls about something or a lot of letters, they're more likely to listen than if, just a few people go to the Hill and say, hey, can you repeal this?
Mm-hmm. Right, so that's great advice. So if you're a physical therapist, you can kind of make it easy for your patients. You can maybe have a preset letter template that they can use. You can give them the phone number for who they are. So I think, I think that those are some. You see that? So I think those are some great ways to advocate for your patients and also empower your patients to get them in the process with us.
I agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said I agree. I think that, especially if your patient is feeling really helpless about how much they pay for a deductible or how much their copay is, this is your way to help them advocate for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, all right, so the Medicare cap, we've got the adding physical therapists to, is that like the health core? Is that what that's?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the health core. In my mind, this is a no-brainer. And I know that the money's already there.
Yep. And that's something that we stress to all of the legislators is if you added physical therapists to this bill, it's not going to, they call this bill a budget neutral bill. So they give every bill a Congressional Budget Office score or a CBO score. And so the score of this one is 0. And so a lot of legislators will look at that and be like, wow, I could support this bill because, especially a Republican, because, this isn't going to cost us money. So for instance, I live in a rural area in Minnesota. And if the need in my area is for a physician, that money is going to go to that physician. But if, let's say, there's enough physicians, but not enough physical therapists, that money would go to the physical therapist. And so whatever the need is in that area, that's where the money will be allocated. And that was kind of the big point that we made for the legislators. And we also really didn't focus a lot on student loan repayment. We focused more on access. In the past, we have not had a lot of really good luck when we've said, oh, we're going to school and having lots of debt, and so we want to pay off our loans. That really didn't really tug at the heartstrings of legislators. But talking about how if you can improve, first of all, the 75% of people that go into these rural areas and are on this specific program stay there. So you're improving access to physical therapy. You're allowing people to not travel 2 hours to go get the care that they need, which means that they can go get the care they need as recommended by their PT and their health is better. And then you're paying less for health care. And so we have found over the last couple of years that by focusing on that message, it has been a lot more successful in getting supporters.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. You always kind of want to take the focus off yourself and put it on to where you can be of greatest service. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay. And then the last one is the concussion. It's not really a bill yet, so I don't want to call it a bill, right?
Yeah, it's concussion management, I think you could say. And We haven't really come up with a specific writing of the bill. We have an idea of what we want to do. We want to standardize concussion management across the United States, and we want physical therapists to be a part of the management team. So that's the biggest issue, is that in some states, a physician is the one that kind of oversees everything, and in some states, the physical therapist isn't even included in that team. And so we want to try to craft a bill that's going to work towards a multidisciplinary team that includes the physical therapist to help determine when people, specifically student athletes, are safe to go back not only to sports, but also when they should be pulled off the field. And so we're this lobbying effort or advocacy effort really focused on trying to find a champion for that bill. And I didn't really hear a lot of other people say that, any congressman or senator came out and specifically said, oh, I'll do it. But a lot of them did say, oh, I'd like more information on this so that I can, analyze it to see if this is something I'd be interested in. And the great thing about Federal Advocacy Forum is if you don't know the answer to something, you just say, I don't know, I'll get back to you on that. And then you tell APTA's lobbyists through a form that you fill out after you're done advocating, and they will all follow up with every single senator and representative after the Federal Advocacy Forum and answer those specific questions that maybe you didn't know, but they definitely know.
Great. All right. So let's go into the wrap up now, right? So you've gone to all of your congressmen or women and representatives and senators, and after you finish, you sort of alluded to you fill out a form or what have you. So after you're finished with all these meetings, what happens next? Because I think a lot of people may say, oh, well, okay, you went to go talk to them and then they forgot everything, or now what happens?
Right. So the most important part about Federal Advocacy Forum is follow-up. So you don't stop, you just don't go to Washington and just talk to your congressman one time. It's not really going to matter. It's all about forming relationships, because physical therapists, that's what we're best at. We are really good at communicating with people and forming relationships. And so Federal Advocacy Forum gives you if you haven't already done this at home, Federal Advocacy Forum gives you an in with your congressman or your senator, gives you the opportunity to follow up with them later on. One of the things that they encouraged at the forum, and they also gave advice on, is hosting events for that specific congressperson at your hometown, going to visit them at their office, attending town hall meetings, writing them letters, calling them on a regular basis, letting them get to know you, so that if they have a question on physical therapy or on healthcare, the first person they think of is, oh my gosh, I have to call Karen, because Karen knows these issues. She's talked to me about this before and I don't really know what to do. And so that's where everything comes to play, is back at home. And they really stress the importance of following up with your congressional delegation in order to really keep pushing towards the issue, because things aren't going to happen overnight. And so it takes years for policy to be put in place. And that's where the relationship building comes in.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. All right. Now, if there's a physical therapist out there watching this and they like what you're saying, they're interested in it, how can they get involved with the Federal Advocacy Forum? And does it only happen once a year?
That's a great question. The Federal Advocacy Forum does happen once a year. It's really easy to get involved. All you have to do is go to APTA's website, click on Federal Advocacy, and that forum will pop up. It happens every year. It's usually the first weekend in April or the last weekend in March. So it's around the same time every single year. It's about $250 to attend the conference. So that's the registration fee. All your meals are included. So like breakfast and lunch are all included. And then you also get to see some really great speakers. Brad Finch has been a regular the last couple of years, and he's an expert at building relationships with congressional delegation. But there's been experts from CNN and MSNBC and some of those popular news shows that you watch every day that come and give good keynote addresses. And so you get to see some great speakers, you get some good coaching, you get some great food. You have to usually pay for your ticket to fly to DC, but there are states and sections that will offer scholarships. If you are a key contact or a federal affairs liaison for either the state or a section or a specific congressman, depending on the issue that we're advocating for, and if your congressman is really important in trying to get that vote, a lot of times scholarships or stipends are given out to go to Federal Advocacy Forum. Me personally, I have only had to pay for maybe I would say $400 out of the 4 Federal Advocacy Forums that I've gone to. So, there's a lot of great ways to be a scholar, to win scholarships. Also, if you become a PT PAC Eagle, which means you donate $400 to PT PAC, your registration to Federal Advocacy Forum is free.
Yep.
So that's a pretty good use of your money right there, I think. I am a PT PAC Eagle, and so I had free registration this year, which was really awesome to be able to just register for the conference and not have to pay anything. So I encourage you, if you haven't donated to PT PAC or you're thinking about it, being an Eagle is the way to go.
And also, every member of APTA donated $20. That's it, $20. We would have the largest medical PAC in the country.
Yes, that is true.
And you have to be an APTA member in order to donate to the PT PAC. That's part of the rules of the PAC.
Yep, that is correct. And one of the other things that I would say is, the PT PAC, that money goes to congressional delegates that support our issues. And so if you donate to the PT PAC, you're helping your patients. It's an indirect help, but you're really helping improve access and making sure that people get elected that support PT issues. And 97% of candidates who get donations from PT PAC actually get elected. So we have a very great return on investment.
That's a high.
Keep that in mind when you are, using those $20 next time at the grocery store. Maybe consider donating to PT PAC and helping with the cause.
Absolutely. All right. So before we wrap things up, is there anything that we didn't cover about Federal Advocacy Forum that you want the listeners to know about?
Well, this year, 77 students attended Federal Advocacy Forum, which is one of the largest. They said it was the largest that has ever attended, but 3 years ago when I went, they said they had 80. So I don't know if that was right. But I'll just say it was the largest student body that have attended. And if you're a student and you're really wanting to be involved, this is such a great conference to come to. Because number one, you're learning about the issues, or a new PT. You're learning about the issues and you're getting very good training. If you come to this conference and you have that 1 day of training, you are literally an expert on these issues. And you can answer a lot of the questions that the congressional delegates ask you. Plus, depending on your state, of course, but for the most part, states will match you up to a PT mentor who has done this before. So one of the highlights for me this year, even though I've done federal advocacy a lot and I have quite a bit of experience doing advocacy, is I got to spend the entire time with Eva Norman. And if you don't know who Eva Norman is, she is pretty much known for her ability to advocate at a federal and state level. And it is just so awesome to see these people that I admire in action, talking about their patients and talking to their congressional delegates, because that's how you become an expert, by practicing and by watching. And so if you are interested in going to Federal Advocacy Forum or wanting to learn more about the issues, I really encourage you to consider this as a way to go. There's a lot of opportunities for students. Every section, I think, will offer a scholarship. I know the education section offered one this year, and the student that went, it was her first time. And she told me that she wasn't really sure if she would really like it, but after being around the PTs that she was around and seeing how passionate everybody was, she knew that she was going to do it again. So if you're a student, this is a great conference to come to, and it's one of the less expensive ones, because I think students, for registration for students, I'm pretty sure is like $100. So it's pretty cheap as a student. So I would definitely encourage, I mean, anybody, but definitely students to come to this conference.
Excellent. And again, if you're interested in learning more about the Federal Advocacy Forum, you can go to apt.org and click on Federal Advocacy and learn more about it. And there's also the app. So let me get my app here for a second. Where's my physical therapy app? So there's an app called APTA Action. There it is. So on this app, you can find out, you can make your PT PAC donation. You can find out the congressional directory, state advocacy, Federal Action Center, talking points, PT team sign up. So it's all right here, APTA Action.
You can also, if you want to write a letter to your congressman, but really don't want to put in the work to actually write the letter, there's already pre-made letters on the app, and it literally takes 3 seconds. You can also tweet from the app, tweet at your congressman. Literally takes 3 seconds. So if you really are passionate about a PT issue, but don't really know what to write, APTA has some pretty awesome letters on there that you can send, they'll send an email directly to your congressional delegate.
Awesome. All right. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with Federal Advocacy Forum and sharing with everyone else what it is, what they do, and how important it is. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Karen. This is something I'm really passionate about, and I really hope that I've made some people excited. And if you have any questions, you can contact me on Twitter. I'm at thestuff21. Just tweet at me, and we can have a discussion about federal advocacy.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steph. And everybody, thanks so much for tuning in.